Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. We did a great one on Wednesday, actually. I was with Kevin Boyle. We're talking about the law, what it is, how it affects you, what we were born into, all that kind of stuff. Tonight, the title of this show is The United Church of Hate Exposed, right? So let's get on with it. The mind virus is spreading faster than the coronavirus, and it's much more dangerous. In Wuhan, there are drones circling the city. In the UK, the drones are everywhere too. They are shutting down all those outside the Communitarian Party narrative of extremist hate. In 1969, it was stated that the churches will help us in bringing in the new global system by degenerating society. This statement was made by a Dr. Richard Day, Professor of Paediatrics at Mount Sinai Hospital Medical School in New York. Previously, he had served as a medical director of Planned Parenthood, the Federation of America. This later became the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He died in 1989. The speeches he made were an off-the-cuff address to his students, and he predicted the new totalitarian governance system and how it would be achieved. The lectures of Dr. Richard Day can be heard on windowsontheworld.net in an article called Social Engineers Then and Now. The tapes are also known as the New Barbarians, and they were kind of related after the event by one of the people who was there, Dr. Lawrence Dunnigan. Very fascinating stuff, and also interesting if you're a person who sort of looks at social engineering. It's pretty scary stuff as well, but no more scary than actually what's happening now. So the lectures can be heard on the website, and it's called Social Engineers Then and Now. Now, recently, an alleged Christian organisation pulled our public interest talks at very short notice. Our talks, the Real Citizens Assembly, that's myself and Piers Corbyn, usually have Sandy Adams as well, but this was just me and Piers. It was cancelled by Worthing Friends Meeting House, which is a Quaker organisation. Now, the Quakers were quite heavily criticised and marginalised at their inception, and now they have been fully infiltrated with the new intolerant hive mind and are fully on board with what religious Christians would call the Antichrist. This is from the Quakers' website. Quakers in Britain have joined education charities, unions and environmental NGOs in signing up to Teach the Future. This is what it's called, Teach the Future, a youth-led campaign to put the climate crisis at the heart of the education system. Yes, you heard that right. The Quakers, a UK alleged Christian group, are putting the climate crisis at the heart of the education system. How are they going to do this? They will be taking their message to parliamentarians this week. That's this week, yes, this week it says here, it's the end of February. It's called Students Organising for Sustainability, SOS/UK. It's a new educational charity that seeks to get more students leading on and learning for sustainability. You know that word, sustainability. What does that mean? That means control and taxation of every aspect of human life, putting you in smart cities and getting rid of you when the time comes. Oh, you didn't know that? Well, we've been talking about it for quite a long time. But yes, this is what they're saying. The campaign is a joint initiative by the UK Student Climate Network and Students Organising for Sustainability. They are calling for, wait for it, a review of how the formal education system in England is preparing students for the climate and ecological crisis. Well, they're going to be preparing for that for quite a long time, aren't they? I wonder when it's going to happen, though. A Climate Emergency Education Act. Yes, they're trying to get this into statute. And an endowment fund for youth-led climate action. I looked at that this week, and it's actually part of this World Bank project. In other words, you invest in your own demise. Yes, a climate endowment fund, which is going to cut out any organisation which is outside the narrative of sustainability, which means anything but corporates who are making money out of the green agenda. And remember, the green agenda is nothing to do with actually saving the planet. It's about an elite who are lining their pockets on the back of a UN Global Action Plan and the World Bank. But the infiltration of all religious organisations is now complete. We have actually reported on this quite a bit. The new apocalypse is the climate change agenda, a new form of world governance through infiltration and psychological warfare on an unsuspecting and almost fully dumbed down population. Yes, the new apocalypse is climate change and the new god is Gaia. In case you didn't know, that's Mother Earth. We pay the World Bank to be on the Earth and carbon taxes are our benefice. All on the back of an idea from a billionaire and an elite think tank. Yes, we've covered this in a lot of our shows if you're new to the information, but do have a look at our previous shows on global governance and how an elite think tank called the Club of Rome invented the global warming climate crisis. Yes, it's always a good one when you get those people who call everything you do a conspiracy theory or some kind of deep state fantasy. It's quite interesting when you actually put the evidence out there, as that actually happened this week when somebody had sent some papers in which they claimed proved that anthropogenic global warming, that's man-made, human-made global warming, was actually happening. Well, none of the papers actually proved that, and they all were kind of taken apart by a couple of scientists and some other bloggers, and then it all went quiet. So these people go into shock very easily. But let's have a look at what the Quakers are up to, because we have a sort of vested interest in this now, because the Quakers are supporting the policies of what Christians would call the Antichrist, and they're in it up to their necks. Learning and leading, Quaker climate action in 2020. This is by someone called Unan Ryder, a big fan of UN World Bank policies. She says, the deep commitment Quakers have to valuing all life and placing equality and justice at the heart of their witness is clearly expressed through this work. It demonstrates that Quakers in Britain have an important contribution to make to global movements for climate and economic justice. Oh yes, the George Soros and Antifa Church of the Damned. Yes, that's the sort of climate and economic justice she's talking about here. She says, my role is based in the economics and sustainability team. Well, wait a minute, what's this got to do with good Christian values, I ask myself. She says, I'll be supporting activism on climate justice and on the new economy, which is basically the death of the old economy. The new economy is, of course, the green economy, which is only going to help people who are working in the sustainability sector. It's not going to be for any of us. So, she says, whether you're a seasoned activist or just getting interested or somewhere in between, I'm here to support you in learning more about these issues, considering what action can you take to make political, social and economic change? The C word! Yes. So yes, an Antichrist, UN change agent, a useful idiot, a Quaker collectivist. But next, we're going to get onto a big story. Yes, it's a big story. And it was from Bristol, UK this week. Our regular guest and commentator, Piers Corbyn, was actually there. But first, let's give you a bit of a background. This week we had a 17-year-old very ill teenager who looks like an undernourished 13-year-old reading sound bites in a monotonous voice from her phone. I wonder who this could be.
Wearing a plastic Mac.
Well, I thought she was wearing two, actually.
2 plastic Macs.
Well, she had a woolly hat on as well.
Indeed.
Greta Thunberg's speech in Bristol lasted about 5 minutes, and the lack of content was stunning. The totalitarian victims of the state cannot see beyond simple propaganda, and still call everything criticising the puppet masters and the agenda behind this damaged person hate speak. But let's look first at Chapter 25 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 21. It calls for the need to enlist and empower children and youth in reaching for sustainability. So I wonder who implanted this climate change agenda in the highly inactive and minuscule brain of the 17-year-old, 13-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg. Well, I suppose the answer was on the sails of the yacht that she was meant to be travelling to New York in. Yes, the yacht that was called the Militia, which means malice, but previously the Edmund de Rothschild E60, which was flying the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations on its sails. Yes, but let's see what it says in United Nations Chapter 25 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which openly say they want to recruit children for their cause. Sustainability is the transfer of all assets to the elite system and the World Bank. Yes, that's what it is. I'm paraphrasing here. One of the aims of the Quaker brainwashing cult, though, is to make children demand the World Bank implement the Climate Endowment Fund. So, the Quakers aren't a political organisation at all, are they? But let's have a look at the draft covenant on environment and development. It states in Article 8, equity will be achieved through implementation of the international economic order and through transfers of resources to developing countries. So this is the idea that the West is going to be destroyed, as stated in Extinction Rebellion's aims, and the East will be allowed to rise until it reaches a kind of poverty for all level. So what this means in effect is that the UK will experience power cuts, people will be taxed beyond their means and have assets and property taken by the state. So people like the Quakers and these other groups who have been enlisted by the UN are all in on it. Every religion is on board, and the new apocalypse is basically benefice for climate change. The climate change agenda is all about the worship of Gaia Mother Earth, and it's rolled out in a very totalitarian and psychological warfare friendly kind of way. But wait a minute, look at this. What about a meditation against climate change in Parliament Square? What are you laughing at, Mr. Corbyn? This is no laughing matter. United in fierce love for our sacred earth, we invite you to join us for a multi-faith 40-day prayer and meditation vigil. People from all faiths and philosophies, XR or non-XR. So wait a minute, can you see what's happening here? Extinction Rebellion is now a religious cult. Well, wait a minute, it was a religious cult to start with, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
It says you are welcome to sit with us in Parliament Square, London, from now until the 12th of April. Read on and sign up here, it says. So let's see what they say about themselves. What is it? A multi-faith prayer and meditation vigil for the earth for 40 days and 40 nights in all weathers and with no structures. Why? Very good question. To demonstrate our unity and the power of faith in the face of the current climate and ecological emergency. Well, wait a minute. Would you be set outside in a climate emergency? I don't think I would. I think I'd take cover in a cave, especially like they did thousands of years ago.
Drafty, and when it's meant to be hot.
Remember the catastrophic events that have happened and been proven to happen on planet Earth, where people were still in caves clutching their last meal before they'd been wiped out. That's going to happen in Parliament Square, you know. Oh yeah. They've got basically, can anyone see the first floor, though, in this pointless time-wasting exercise in mental illness yet? I think you probably can. But it's in Parliament Square at Westminster. It was initiated by Christian Climate Action and the faith communities of Extinction Rebellion and part of the broader 40 Days campaign. Now, before we talk about Bristol and the Greta Thunberg rally, I'm going to get onto something else which people of a religious persuasion might find rather disturbing, or a certain religious persuasion. In a social engineering divide and rule strategy against Muslims, London is to host the world's first ever Muslim Pride Festival. The photo which advertises this on Indy 100, has a placard with, and I don't want anyone to quote me as though I've said this here, this is what they've said: Allah is gay. Now, I think that could cause a few problems within the Muslim community, which is exactly what it's there for, you see. It's there to incite Muslims against each other. And then you get the created, not so real minority groups who've been empowered by diversity to openly attack the other Muslims. So then you've got a war, haven't you? This is how it's done. So it says we as LGBTIQ Muslims, IQ, I don't think there's much IQ going on, do you?
So, are you sure it says that?
It says IQ, yeah.
Oh my God.
Often find ourselves isolated, without community, and frequently facing homophobic, biphobic, transphobic and Islamophobic abuse. That must be hard work, mustn't it?
Oh, damn right it must be, yeah.
The event will build on the incredible events we organised in the past and feature panels, discussions, speakers, arts, culture and history. A first for LGBTQI Muslims. With tickets for Iman Fest now available to members of the public, organisers are now using social media to reach queer Muslims who might like to get involved. Can't imagine that causing any controversy whatsoever, can you? Social Engineering by the Universal Church of Hate. That's the title of tonight's show, you see. That's what it's all about. The Universal United Church of Hate UK is behind all of this subversion. Most UK online newspapers are run by Reach PLC, the Live Group. Now, we've covered these people regularly because what they do is they openly put out stories which demonise members of the public which are not even true. Yes, it's happened to people we know. One of them sat next to me, actually. 5G protesters hurl abuse at sea cadets. Well, no, they didn't. Piers Corbyn was one of them with his sign.
That's right.
And it was at a mayoral parade in Glastonbury. And it was proved by me, because I filmed the event, that this never happened. And it was an allegation that the police stated was true, put into a press release, and was repeated by this Live group, which is Somerset Live, Kent Live, Essex Live, and of course, Bristol Live, which is what we're going to get on next. Now, these newspapers are also press releases, basically. They use press releases all the time, and they put journalists' names on it. Now, that's very important. They demonise people who step outside the new communitarian hive mind of acceptable dogma and political correctness. So following St Greta's 5-minute speech, which she read off her phone in the rain, Bristol Live decided to trawl Facebook for anti-Greta hate speech. Well, this is a bit like the Chairman Mao school of state journalism. The difference being that the belief in the fake green apocalypse and the worshipping of brainlessness replaces the totalitarian communist dictator. Headline in Bristol Live. Get this, you're going to like this one. The abuse and threats made to Greta Thunberg by people from Bristol. By grown men, many who appear to have children of their own. Can you see what they're doing here? Oh, yes. It's all a bleeding patriarchy that ate Greta Thunberg, isn't it? So the evil patriarchy are at it again. The excuse for an article, which they put out, gushes on about St Greta and her 5-minute text message of short and simple sound bites. The thousands of negative comments, it says, were on familiar themes. Questioning the validity of climate science. Which climate science are you talking about here? Would you be talking about the climate science of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change? Would you be talking about that?
Science.
The fake science? Oh, why are you so full of hate, Piers? Questioning the rights of children to go on strike from school. Questioning young people's use of technology, transport and general carbon footprint, and complaining about the disruption of the city centre's roads being closed. OK, so which climate science are they talking about? And kids cannot actually go on strike either. I think that's a major point here, isn't it? Children aren't employed. They don't have unions, so therefore they can't go on strike.
Well, the teachers are leading them out there anyway.
They are. They're plain truants. It's not the same thing.
Teachers, I saw them. Spoke to them.
So it says, so that Bristol Live said, it sounds sensible to challenge that, doesn't it? Well, actually, we just have, and it's not sensible, no. The extra step they took was to appear to call for or encourage or incite people to take physical action against either Greta Thunberg or those taking part. Now, that's an absolute lie, because none of them said that. None of these people said, all right, their comments were a bit kind of over the top, but they're taken out of context. So the people who
They're
are appearing...
all online anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, the people who are appearing to make those suggestions of physical actions and violence were very often parents, it says here, and grandparents themselves. Oh, shame on you. Some had even called for people on social media to be kind following the death of TV death presenter Caroline Flack. I don't know what that's got to do with it. The following, it says, is a fraction of the apparent calls for violence or violent intent against Greta Thunberg or the school strikers. And those apparent calls for violence or violent intent are a fraction of the statements made. It says here. One of the comments was rather inappropriate, but all were taken out of context. As I said, one said she should be burnt at the stake. And in response to that, someone pointed out that the local ducking stool was still there. So this is obviously comedy, right? So, how can this be classed as hate speech? It's totally and utterly ridiculous. But it's a terrible idea, in my opinion. As Soros would say, she was the first climate change martyr. So that's a terrible idea. If she was burnt at the stake, we'd never hear the last of it, right? Ever. So one said, milkshakes at the ready. Now, this is referring to this idea of milkshaking, which is what Antifa do to people like Nigel Farage, right? Yeah, so basically, it's a totally innocuous thing to say. These are sort of memes of the time, aren't they? So who's actually calling for violence against her? Nobody was, actually. One of them said something rather inappropriate, which was, I won't really repeat, but it wasn't even that controversial. The father of some young children wrote, her parents need to slap her with a brick.
Wow.
Oh, another who called himself Spencer Trump, well, he's got the name Trump, he's got to be full of hate, hasn't he? Commented, send her back the way she should be, in a flat pack.
But these might be fake tweets, you know what I mean?
Well, it's off Facebook. I mean, but if these so-called journalists have time to dredge through thousands of people's Facebook posts, what do they actually do? Well, answer on a postcard. Oh, it's all right, I've just found out. Nothing. They don't do anything. They basically just make up press releases and repeat what the police tell them to, and then they make up these stories which aren't even stories. So all their profile pictures were published with this stuff underneath. It's like an episode of Crime Watch, basically.
Yeah.
So this is the new system. There are no journalists on these publications and no moral code to their immature and sinister manipulations. Any Maoist government would be proud. Funny, though, that even in countries where there are totalitarian governments, this sort of thing would never happen, as it would fall below the accepted standards of state propaganda, right? Because no serious totalitarian state would actually use something as clumsy as this, right? No. They would actually make it much more effective. But because it's the United Church of Hate UK, they're absolutely incompetent. But these vile publications should be avoided at all costs, as they are demonising members of the public, and they say it is in the public interest under a thing called qualified privilege. Well, we've been the victim of these people through lies, basically, and slander, not stuff that's true. And I know for a fact that they libelled people who were basically not wanted by the police, and that caused a massive internal operation where they did get their wrists slapped and brought down Crime Stoppers. However, let's get our guest on next. Mr. Piers Corbyn is going to talk about the hate from the Universal United Church of Hate in Bristol.
Yes, we had about 7 or 10 people there from different parts of the country, and we turned up to...
This is at Greta Thunberg's oration.
Yes, that's right. There was a lot of travel difficulties, so some got there late. But, it didn't matter. Despite everything, we managed to make a fantastic impact given our smallness of our numbers. We brought along a leaflet where we were careful not to attack Greta directly, but to attack Greta's minders. And the leaflet is headed, Greta's minders, put her in school and take away your climate lies. And then it exposes the claims of the Australian fires, many of which were lit by environmental activists. We managed to give these out to some people and got some interest in the pamphlets. And little groups of students had discussions, and some were actually interested. They were surprised, but interested. However, we didn't make very much impact until we heard the drums beating of a returning march of hyperactivists who had been around Bristol after Greta Thunberg spoke and were coming back to College Green. We had posted ourselves by the bus stop there, made a little base, and when we saw them coming, we hoisted our banner, which says, "Climate policy controls you, not climate." And when they marched up to this, which is beside them, not in front of them, beside them, they saw it and all stopped and screamed and yelled and shouted at us. And some of them started throwing things at us. And some of them started wrestling with our banner, tried to try and get it off people. And that was defended well by including a 17-year-old from London who had come with us as a day off school, you might say, to make some real scientific points. I attempted to speak on a loudhailer, and they then turned on their loudhailer with a siren on it, so I couldn't be heard. I managed to shout a few things about climate and also said, "Your tactics are Nazi tactics." The police got a bit alarmed at the stuff being thrown at us, and Stuart Agnew, a farmer and former MEP from East Anglia, had his hat grabbed and thrown into the crowd. But somebody in the crowd obviously didn't like this, and they brought the hat back, which I thought...
obviously a Brexiteer or Trump supporter.
Yeah. Which was interesting. Anyway, the minders of the setup obviously they didn't know what to do. So they launched a diversion. Somebody stripped naked and dived into the black mud that the College Green had turned into by their demonstration. And their megaphone shouted out, "Oh, let's watch this." So half the people...
The distraction principle.
It was. However, the hope was everyone would go there, but they didn't. Only about half the crowd went there, leaving us talking to the other half of the crowd, which actually was very constructive. There were people who asked genuine questions, listened for answers, and a great number of people took the leaflets and the pamphlets. And we also put a number of people on the spot. A teacher came up to us and said, "You people are dangerous."
I got called that, you know.
Dangerous, yes.
Yeah, I got called dangerous.
And I said to him, "Well, for what? Could you tell us one thing, please, which we have said which is incorrect?" And he couldn't say anything. He just screamed, "My year 10 student over there knows more than you." And I said, "Well, I don't know about that, but just tell me one thing we've said that is incorrect." And he slunk off. Which was probably not a good example to his student or students. I don't know how many he brought along. Then we had an academic turn up who said she'd been interviewed alongside me about 2 years ago on the radio programme, and that's true. So she said, "Oh, shall we discuss something?" I said, "Well, a bit difficult here because people were screaming and shouting, but we could have a proper organised public discussion debate. Could you do that?" And she wouldn't give a straight answer. So I announced this quest to her, over the megaphone, and she had nothing to say.
The runaway principle.
The runaway principle. Anyway, I went back and I explained to people, look, man-made climate change does not exist. Carbon dioxide levels follow temperatures, do not lead them. And, we generally got the message across very well. The police were getting a bit kind of tetchy, though. So they persuaded me to then join a little TV interview, which was local West of England University TV. So me and Stuart Agnew and John Kitson, who's a 5G campaigner, all had a little interview. So altogether, we had quite a success. But I should say, not very far down in this activity, there was serious violence. I mean, our 17-year-old was threatened by somebody who said they believed in violence to save the planet. If the police weren't there and if people didn't have video phones, I wonder what would happen. Because one is brought back to what used to happen in Nazi Germany, for example, where, crowds were whipped up into frenzies, and I won't go into what followed. But you see, these youth are being brainwashed, and we've got quite a task to get through to them. I mean, the next thing is, though, we're going to have some sort of meeting in Bristol, I think, and even try and get meetings in schools in Bristol, because Bristol is being used as a test case for this stuff and for 5G, which I think is why Greta Thunberg went there.
Absolutely, yes. It's the 5G rollout, the Internet of Things, the smart city agenda, and of course, lots and lots of gullible students who are mentored into the brainwashing programme by the United Universal Church of Hate UK, which is infiltrating and has infiltrated every organisation. And we have talked about this quite a lot. Go back into our back catalogue if you don't believe me. Been uncovering this for years. Oh yes, Piers has just brought in a headline here from the Evening Standard. Carney virus alert as shares nosedive. Warning from bank chief as FTSE suffers 200 billion fall. And 3 more UK cases are confirmed. Now, I think that says it all, really, doesn't it?
Well, there's a lot more people died on the roads in that time.
Well, 3 people have got flu and the stock market collapses. What sort of
well, I think, you see, that is a
state
point.
of play is this?
What we have here is a very convenient appearance of a virus in the midst of a big scare campaign. I'm not saying it isn't going to be a problem for certain people, and some people will die, but it is being used to control and scare people into whatever the authorities want. And there's 2 things of note. One is that it appears that there's more, a lot of these cases have been occurring where there's 5G turned on, such as in Wuhan province and on that boat. However, it's not fair to say that all these cases are caused by 5G being switched on. I just want to make that clear. There's not anything which shows that, but it may be that 5G will enhance the risk of you having this. I don't know. But look, see, there's some quite important stuff on the net, and I would advise you to go to at Piers_Corbyn to have a look at some of these links, and probably at weatheraction.com. But you see, the 5G 60 gigahertz frequency is a frequency at which oxygen molecules, or the double bond in oxygen, OO, gets excited. And the reason for using this frequency in particular is that because it gets absorbed in oxygen, it means you can have 5G phones near each other operating on 5G, but they won't interfere with each other because the signal gets attenuated between them. So the air is absorbing things to make it easier to communicate. Now that sounds strange, but that is what it says on these expert websites. Look, ask yourself a question. If oxygen is absorbing, it is getting excited. So something is happening to these oxygen molecules. Whether this is enhancing the risk of getting coronavirus, because of what it's doing in your lungs, I don't know. But I think it's something which you ought to watch this space. But whatever, it's clear the whole thing is being used to prepare the world for something.
Yes, it's
more
basically
and more attacks on living standards and massive spend to save the banks.
Yes, it's actually a practice run for a rollout, and that's quite obvious from the way it's been promoted and the fear-mongering and the very small number of cases in the UK. But when something's in the press that much and there's that much hype about it, then you have to look a bit more carefully. There's been a lot of sort of misinformation surrounding this, and I don't believe a lot of the stuff that's coming out of China. I don't believe a lot of stuff that's coming out of any media. So I do tend to look a bit more below the surface, and I'm thinking that, yes, it's all about rolling out a vaccine and control and management of population. It's very simple stuff. There's nothing really complicated about it. And yes, the whole idea of it is that the mind virus is much more serious than the coronavirus. The mind virus is much more dangerous, and it's infected far more people. I think that's the point of tonight's show. Indeed. I was going to get on to...
Call it a carnivirus, as it does in this headline.
Well, exactly.
It's a carnivirus, you see, as opposed to
carnivirus.
A coronavirus.
Yeah, they call it a carnivirus. Yes. Well, it's all related. And the Global Environmental Facility, this Climate Endowment Fund, these basically co-opted religious groups who are all in on this, and every organisation that trains people into these sustainable development principles for the World Bank are numerous. However, let's now get on to something of a more comedic quality. Well, I wouldn't say it's quality, but it's comedic.
What, something funny? My God.
Well, it's funny in a way. The United Universal Church of Hate are dividing all religion and have infiltrated all organisations and have brainwashed a generation or two, as we've been saying. Now, let's get on to that counterintelligence version of Dumb and Dumber. Yes, they're called Hope Not Hate. They're a UK charity and basically an international counterintelligence clown show. It masquerades as a charity and it's a limited company. They get lots of money from lobbyists who want to shut down free speech or any speech in this country. We've done many shows on them and do look them up. They are ineffective but well funded and pretty much hated by all the public who know about them. Check out their videos, Hope Not Hate. If you haven't heard about them, what they do is they go around demonising people outside the accepted corridor of opinion. And they're made up of useful idiots who are a kind of Dumb and Dumber version of MI5. They demonise anyone outside the accepted opinion corridor and incite hatred and attack those they deem to be against their sort of Antifa, Soros, Open Society, subversive destruction campaign. They have been known to team up with Antifa and Black Bloc. Indeed, members of Antifa are also part of Hope Not Hate. Members of Hope Not Hate, in fact, people who work for Hope Not Hate have been spotted at these Antifa gatherings and been part of their groups, which have attacked old age pensioners. Antifa attacked London's OAPs. Look that one up on YouTube or windowsontheworld.net to see how ridiculous this group actually are, but also dangerous because they can raise a mob, you see, a mob of absolute idiots, but a mob just the same. So they produce these sort of laughable reports and they talk about infiltrating hate groups and this kind of thing. Now, the last...
But they're the hate group.
Well, they are, of course. The last one they infiltrated was actually a public meeting. So basically, they went undercover and infiltrated a public meeting. Now, this is Dumb and Dumber. This is people who probably wouldn't be allowed into MI5, but they've been given something to do. In other words, rather than just give them crayons, they've tried to recruit them into the lower levels of the intelligence services. But yes, a group of academics who wish to question historical narratives and talk about conspiracy theories are the target of their latest hate campaign. Yes, the Hope Not Hate, State of Hate campaign, the infiltration of a group who meet up publicly once a month. You couldn't make up how retarded these people really are. In their latest laugh fest, which they call the State of Hate, they have tied together those who question the moon landings with their own hate narrative. So it starts with a moon landings conspiracy theory and then quickly descends into hate. One thing always leads to another if you work in the intelligence industry. You know, like occasionally smoking pot leads to crack addiction. It's a slippery slope once you start thinking critically. You'll be recruited by far-right extremists or Al-Qaeda before you know it. So this is where Hope Not Hate come in to try and turn you round, to try and expose you and make you give up your hateful ways. So, but in other words, questioning official events may lead to criticising the far right-wing regime in Israel and its treatment of Palestinians. They really don't like you talking about that one for some reason. This seems to be very high on their hate list. They have recently partnered with an organisation called the Community Security Trust, which is actually a private security firm and also a charity. I don't quite know how that works. And it puts its security guards outside Jewish schools and venues. Now, quite how these two organisations are related is a matter of public interest and probably worth investigation. But Hope Not Hate even feature windows on the world, which would be good publicity if anyone actually read their reports. I mean, I know people who've been number one on their hate list and don't even know they're part of it. They don't even know. Did you know that you were on? Yeah, I said this to Richie Allen, and if you're listening, Richie, do get well soon because we need you back because you're part of their state of hate. You're far right, by the way. Well, actually, you're alt-light, I think, but basically, alt-light leads into the far right. You know, you can't be too careful.
Alt-light.
Yeah,
what's that mean?
Alt-right.
Oh, alt-right.
And they called it alt-light right, and so they've got
okay.
loads of these terminologies.
Okay.
Well, they've got nothing to do, have they? So they just sit around all day making things up. But basically, they are insidious liars and a real sort of dumb and dumber version of MI5. In fact, they, along with Demos, which is this public policy think tank, and another counterintelligence unit, along with the British Psychological Association and the Institute of Strategic Dialogue, and the Institute of Statecraft. These are all like the same echo chamber. But basically, this is what you call not so British intelligence. The activities of this sort of Antifa-backed hate operation are against the interest of any fair-minded person paying tax and living in the UK. The real state of hate, where every organisation is a totalitarian hive mind of uncritical thinking. It's a communitarian, totalitarian, Marxism, take your pick, they're all the same now. None of it actually means anything. Windows on the World, it says, have given platforms to those who hope, not hate, don't like. I've given them platforms, you know. So in other words, I've talked to people they don't like. Well, have I sat next to someone they don't like on the bus?
You probably have.
I probably have, you know, but they need to...
Careful who you meet on the bus. They could have a Windows on the World virus as well as a coronavirus.
Well, they could actually be infiltrating me right now. Well, probably not right now, but maybe. Yeah, maybe they are, you know. I mean, it's like the likes of Israeli-born Gilad Atzmon, who happens to disagree with far-right Zionism, which is a political movement, is an object of their neurotic but state-backed hate. Now, this is a real dichotomy for them because in their childish crayon and colouring book kind of world, music is all about love. Well, how can Gilad Atzmon be full of hate if he's full of music?
Sure.
This is a real dichotomy, and I think the British Psychological Association need to produce a paper on this.
Some of those rap tunes are not about love, though, are they?
Well, Gilad's not a rap musician, he's a jazz musician.
Yeah, okay, but I'm just saying...
Yeah, but they don't talk about that.
music in general, no, okay.
No, they don't talk about the hatred in rap music or anything like that. They don't talk about the misogyny of rap or anything like that, because that's not trendy, you see.
That'd be undiverse.
Well, that's not getting down with the kids, is it? You know,
No.
I mean, you know, come on. So, yeah, but there you go. This must be a paradox to the minuscule brains of this overfunded and deeply unpopular failed counterintelligence operation. Well, have you seen their head of intelligence? Look them up and look at their head of intelligence. They are the dumb and dumber of state-backed intolerance. But, of course, we're also climate deniers. They put a little video out and it's got Windows on the World climate deniers. I think you're in it as well. They even came to record my talk. And the only thing that they could put out, they've been infiltrating this group and meet up publicly for 3 years, by the way. Which, I mean, how can you infiltrate something that anyone can go to, you know?
Well, it means you're undercover, you see.
You know what? I once infiltrated a Tottenham Hotspur football match.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
You didn't name yourself?
No, there was only 70,000 people.
Well, you should have announced that you were there. Should have put up a sign. Mark Windows is here. I'm not infiltrating.
Well, one of these idiots was there. So once I was a football hooligan, now I'm an idiot. Do you know what I mean? Once I was an idiot, now I'm just an idiot. I mean, I think he's head of the intelligence. Have a look at him anyway. They're a comedy, rather nasty, subversive bunch of losers, basically, who everyone hates. So hope not hate, yeah. Let's kind of, move on from that. But I just wanted to give you now something from the Extinction Rebellion website, because this Roger Hallam, because he said something that's politically a bit sensitive. They're now having these.
Jerk.
Well, of course he's a jerk. Well, wait a minute. Well, newsflash.
This hates me.
No, is there anybody who's a member of Extinction Rebellion who isn't? Can you name one?
Comment on that.
Name one.
No.
No, you couldn't name one, could you? No, okay. Well, I've just been looking at their website, and they're trying to get all these different groups together. It's a bit like the Universal United Church of Hate. They're making these groups up, and one's called
frontism.
the UK Transformative Conflict and Justice System.
Hey?
Yeah, the UK Transformative Conflict and Justice System team. This is Extinction Rebellion now, right?
Right.
They've created their own judicial system.
Well, people get transformed when they get banged in prison, do they? What does it mean?
Well,
what is this about?
It's all about them sort of opening these groups up where you go and get brainwashed even more. So if you say anything that's out of line, you get dealt with internally. It's a bit like a totalitarian regime. So they're not injecting people forcibly yet, and they're not locking them up. But they're basically bullying them with political correctness, you see.
Well, that is to come. I mean, I've noticed an increasing number of people being sectioned, actually. An increasing number of people have been sectioned, in my experience, in the last few years.
They've actually relaxed the laws on that now.
Okay.
And I did something on this a while ago. It's worth looking into again. But yes, they're using the old mental health ticket to demonise people who are outside the control narrative. Well, this is, of course, what the Soviet Union did. So it's nothing really that we can be surprised about. This is just soft Bolshevism rather than the other type of Bolshevism. Basically, it says that the Transformative Conflict and Justice Systems team, along with the SOS and Regenerative Culture, is currently setting up an XR UK Care Council, and it's recommending that the situation moves on to this council. This is the Roger Hallam debacle, right? We will share more details around the information and mandate of care councils in March. The proposed care councils will hold the purpose to care for individuals, teams and the movement. These will be gathered for both emergency cases, and it says in brackets, there are plenty of those. Well, there's plenty of emergency cases in Extinction Rebellion. I mean, you're talking about mass mental illness here. So, of course, there's lots of emergency cases. It says, and those where difficult decisions need to be made swiftly. They will be made up of rebels. Rebels! They'll be made up of rebels and people with experience in transformative justice and other relevant practices who are able to be multi-partial. Multi-partial? How can you be multi-partial?
As opposed to impartial.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
two sides as opposed to no sides. It's crazy.
But if you're multi-partial, then you can't be impartial, can you?
No. What is transformative justice?
It says multi-partial on everyone's side. If you're on everyone's side.
Right.
This is the natural outcome, isn't it? You have a brainwashed drone who can't think, who disagrees with nothing.
Well, I got asked yesterday, on Saturday, at this demonstration, when we started having a discussion, and a woman said to me, there's many truths. How can you be sure that what you're saying is right?
Yes, it's just about the way you're feeling.
Sure, yeah. So I just said, look, it's the science, it's scientific fact. Carbon dioxide levels follow temperatures, not the other way around. But I don't know, for her, that was a difficult thing. But it was good discussion all the same, because other people were listening to this and obviously realised that this question is actually a ludicrous question in a way, but what it does is to devalue science, you see.
Yes, but all you have to say...
turning everything into opinion.
...is which of the known facts are you disputing?
Well, she wasn't sure of even known facts, I suspect, this woman. I'm not sure. At least she was having a discussion, though. I don't want to do her down too much. But, you see, these are the sort of questions they get fed at school.
Transformative justice.
God knows.
The Council on Transformative Justice. Yeah, it's all kind of going a bit crazy with this stuff, because I've been sent a lot of things recently about how this psychological manipulation has taken over everything. Now, around sort of 2010, when the Big Society was announced and all these change agent groups were mentoring themselves into taking over your local community, it's not conspiracy theory. I've named and shamed it all before. But around about that time, this was a kind of visible thing. It's kind of now so prevalent that you don't see it as much because it's there everywhere. In other words, if you're outside it, then you can see it easily, but most people can't because they're some way inside of it because they've been compromised into it. And basically it's a religious aspect, and it is the universal united church of hate, and it has infiltrated just about every organisation, not just on the planet, but, well, let's just say in the United Kingdom for people who are listening here. And I've looked at this for a long time, and people who actually run their own groups have been taken over by these people and kicked out of their own groups. It's kind of unbelievable, really. But when you look at how it's rolled out, it's just part of what's going on. the Climate Crisis Conference by councils. I think Piers wants to talk about this.
Yes, you see, a lot of things are coming together now, which are all part of regimentation and brainwashing. All the councils seem to be having climate conferences, climate crisis conferences. There's one in Southwark on the 21st of March, and I'll be going along there to point out the need for science. So I would urge you to look in your area and see what is going on. But we have to intervene in these with the truth. And I think this initiative by the Quakers, we also have to intervene in, because they're going to have their 40 days on the lawn. Well, we should go along there, and I think we should hoist a few placards. One comes to mind, a very simple placard, stating not a single scientific paper using real-world data supports man-made or proves man-made climate change. See, there isn't one.
No.
And I put challenges to all scientists that I meet to produce one, and they never do. So we should put that there, along with our favourite banner, climate policy controls you, not climate. And, you know, counter whatever the Quakers are trying to do, because it sounds a very, very insidious thing. If they get, you know, a change of law basically giving the duty of schools to brainwash children in all subjects on this climate stuff, you know, that is the end of science. And if they start implementing the measures they're talking about, it's actually the end of civilization if they go literally to the end of what they're talking about. Now, I don't think they can make it, but on the other hand, on the way, they're going to do a lot of damage. And the key thing to understand is they're going to be lowering living standards. And we have to demand our rights to travel, our rights to eat what we want, our rights not to be taxed for stupid things like wind farms, and our rights to pay reasonable prices for electricity, and the rights of African people to have electricity instead of dying from smoke inhalation due to open fires.
The thing is that there's going to be power cuts in this country, and there's going to be people dying here. So these do-gooders and idiots and middle-class Marxists and these people who are turning their children into vegans and all the rest of it are the victims. They are the victims. So they are the willing victims of it. There's not that many of them, actually, when you consider the whole country. They're mainly a southern phenomenon. These are the people who walk around looking very pleased with themselves, who are the biggest hypocrites on the planet. But these are the people who've been targeted by this social engineering program, the United Church of Hate. It's targeted these people very cleverly because they're narcissistic, they have money, and they will give up all of their rights and freedoms to impress their neighbours.
Well, that's right. It's piety, isn't it? They're
Yeah.
sort of promoting piety, that, we want to down ourselves to save the people in the rest of the world. But actually, what is happening, the people in the rest of the world are not being saved at all, as I pointed out about what's happening to women in Africa. They're dying at 1 million a year because the African Development Bank have recently changed their policy to be totally opposed to coal-fired power stations, when before they were partially opposed, or whatever, they're even more opposed. So in other words, what we're having is not redistribution of wealth downwards, we're having redistribution of wealth upwards, and massive opportunities for the multinationals. And I suspect that Bill Gates' sudden interest in coronavirus, or whatever, lots of things, and CO2, could be that he's got some program up his sleeve to get huge amounts of funding to, for example, produce a microbe which will absorb CO2, which will have no effect. Or he's got a antivirus to deal with this coronavirus, which may or may not be a biological weapon anyway. I mean, we don't know, but there's something strange about it, and very strange about how it is being used. I know this bigger picture is suddenly getting bigger and bigger, but you see, that's what we do on Windows on the World.
Exactly. I've just been looking at the Asia Times, and it's all about the coronavirus. This article says Wuhan virus spreads to every region in China. The pace of the outbreak is causing acute concern for Beijing, the World Health Organization, and the rest of the world. It started off in Wuhan, but now the deadly coronavirus has spread to every region in China and is creeping across the planet. Already the death toll has climbed past 200. Well, that's not a lot, is it? While nearly 10,000 people have become infected. The whole world needs to take action, Michael Ryan, the head of the World Health Organization Emergencies Programme, told a media briefing in Geneva. As the outbreak intensifies in China, the epidemic continues to spread across the world. Confirmed infective cases have been reported in Japan, South Korea, India, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Nepal and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Australia, the United States, Canada and France. Chinese health officials have confirmed that the new virus can spread between people. Well, I think we knew that already, didn't we? But do not believe it to be as serious as SARS. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, or MERS, MERS, Middle East respiratory syndrome. China's state-run media reported this Thursday. So in actual fact, there's more common sense coming out of China than our own government, which shows you how totalitarian we are.
They've had a massive programme of control. Absolutely astounding, which, I think some Western governments would wish they could do that themselves and quite possibly want to model their future activity on exactly what is going on there.
Yeah,
all these people in Spain and you see those films of Greece, Spain, Greece, and France, all up in arms against the governments imposing, lengthening, making people not allowed to have their pensions until they're older. Yeah, and I saw this video of a motorbike, a policeman on a motorbike driving into a demonstrator. And then some demonstrators put through Molotov cocktails at this.
Yeah, I saw that. But you're talking about a country that's been destroyed. They've got nothing left. So of course. When people are that desperate,
this is what the European Union is doing. And they were telling us this is defending workers' rights. Well, I don't see it. I see it the opposite.
Yeah, well, it's been rolled out everywhere. And just as a final thought, Kent Police have been given more tasers. I think 150 more tasers. Well, what I've seen of Kent Police, then if they have tasers, then they are pretty dangerous. So I'd keep away from them if I was you. And this is the rollout. The point is that there's more and more of these useful idiots being put into power every day and given positions in public office. So, in other words, the people who still have any critical thinking ability are in the minority. And that minority are very welcome to listen to Windows on the World, and we're glad that you do. So that's about it for this week. I'll be back on Wednesday and I'll be talking to Kevin Boyle more about law. Those Wednesday shows are much more varied and we're getting into some great stuff. I've been doing a load of research actually in the last week and I've found some interesting material which goes back quite a few years, and I'm going to be starting to put all that out as well because it's very, very relevant to now, because this stuff was ahead of its time and now it's all being implemented. But it's very interesting to get remedies in law, and that's what we're looking for. So Wednesday night's show is all about that. Catch up with those. They're on our YouTube channel. Please help us on Patreon. You can help us to fund our film, become part of it, and you'll find out all about that on our Patreon channel. And also do check the back catalogue of Windows on the World. Piers is going to have the last word.
Okay, yes, excellent. Do all those things and look around for more and more action. What we did in Bristol would have been more effective with more people, although it was effective. And we will have some actions going on. So go to Windows on the World and look for information. Come to weatheraction.com and at Piers_Corbyn. And dare I say, give money to Patreon for Windows on the World. Buy some of our stuff at Weather Action. Not least, we have things to buy, leaflets and pamphlets to pay for, but also I got a parking fee while I was enjoying myself speaking to the crowd in Bristol. So we do need backup. So please do what you can at Patreon and at weatheraction.com.
Yes, we
Thank
are
you.
The resistance.
Aha!
All right, well, we're not really the resistance. We're actually the antidote, which is a lot more powerful. All right, then. That's it for this week. See you all on Wednesday. If you want to tune in at 8 p.m. on our YouTube channel. Also, it goes live at windowsontheworld.net. So it's actually on the website. I prefer you go there, actually, because you can have a sort of look around the website as you're listening on there. All right, then. Thanks a lot, everybody. And remember, Wednesday, 8 p.m., Sunday, 9 p.m. at Windows on the World. See you soon.
Thank you.
Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday, 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and program stream at windowsontheworld.net.